Hi folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. This is part 3 of the video series I'm doing on how I'm building my little plywood boat. And right at the outset, let me just remind you, I know nothing at all about building boats. So with that said, this one is about how to seal up the seams and edges of either the hulls or in this case the outriggers. And we're going to do that with a thing called poor man's fiberglass. And again, this is all experimentation. I've never used poor man's fiberglass or any kind of fiberglass before for that matter. So I've done lots of research on the subject and I've kind of done a little bit of practicing, as you see, and got to a point where I can actually make it work, but I've had to go through a series of hurdles just to get to that point. So first of all then, if we talk about what a real boat builder would do, they'd use something like this fiberglass tape all the seams up, and then put a nice clear coat of epoxy on it. And yep, you can do that by all means, but it can get a bit expensive. So poor man's fiberglass is exactly that. What you're going to do is use a PVA glue. This is called Type Bond 3. And I have seen videos where they say use Type Bond 1 or 2, but this one is specifically designed as a waterproof glue, unlike Type Bonds 1 and 2. And the reason they sometimes recommend using the first two is because there's some thoughts about whether a cured Type Bond 3 will then stick to another coat of Type Bond 3. So I've done some research and it would appear that it's the same for all of them, Type Bonds 1, 2 and 3, and there is a way around it, so I'm going to show you that part today. If I show you what I've done, I started off with the standard thing where you buy one of those canvas drop cloths that you get from the DIY stores for painters. I couldn't get a medium duty one, so I got this heavy duty one, and frankly, having done a bit of testing, it wasn't what I wanted. If you can see that, there's actually quite a big ridge on the side, and even after sanding down, it still wasn't really what I wanted. Nice and strong, definitely. So what I've done, I've actually gone out and found an old cotton sheet from my wife's cupboard, don't tell the wife. And I did another test with that, and this time, obviously that's just the overhanging bit, but that's come out rather well. A little bit of sanding, and I've got quite a nice neat corner on it. So that's exactly how I've achieved this. Now I did have to enlist the wife's help to cut strips of fiberglass, of what we're now going to call tape. Looks more like a bandage actually. And this is what we ended up with. I've rolled this up, but effectively that's one sheet's length of 4-inch or 100mm cotton sheet. And here's how it ended up, so that wasn't too bad. My first few attempts at doing this, by applying the glue slightly differently, I did get a few air bubbles in it, but this one now seems to have virtually no air bubbles, or nothing appreciable anyway. There is a slight one just here which I've just noticed, but again there's a piece underneath that, so I think that'll be fine. We'll soon find out when I put it on the water, and if it lets the water in, then I've done it wrong. But so far this seems to be working. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through the process that I'm going through for the rest of the boat. I've got one more of the outriggers to do. I've already done 2. I've got the bow section, which is down here, and the main hull or the tub to do. And really, it's pretty simple and straightforward. It's really just where you've got these sort of curves or bends, you just have to make sure you've got a nice neat finish on there. So I'm going to start by mixing up some glue. I'm not going to use a vast amount, just enough to do this job, because of course glue does go off, and you'll see it's actually quite a thick sort of gloopy sort of mixture. And I just wipe that, there we go. And I've seen various videos where people have actually applied this neat, or I've seen them apply it as a 50-50 solution with water. Neither of those during my test did exactly what I wanted, so I'm just applying a small amount of water and mixing it around until I end up with a sort of a consistency a bit more like a normal paint. I found that works really well. You have to spend a few minutes just getting this all thoroughly mixed in, but it does pay dividends in the end. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, at some point, I will be using a roller, but I've found that rather than trying to apply with a roller to start with, it's best to apply with a paintbrush. And the reason for that is that the roller, it does give you a nice even coat, but it actually gives you a fairly thin coat. So before I actually start applying, let's explain where I'm at. I've cut some strips off, one for each end, just slightly bigger than the bottom. And then there's one at the front and one at the back, which will go on like that. So, first things first, let's get some glue on this thing. As I say, I'm getting a good coat of glue on it, especially on the seams. Just make sure it doesn't drip. But it does spread far better when you've got this sort of consistency. And it also soaks into the material better too. Make sure you go far enough out to accommodate the 100mm or 4-inch material. Need at least a good couple of inches on the top and a good couple of inches on the side. The other thing I've found with this is that the actual usable time for this sort of thing normally, I believe, is sort of 5 to 10 minutes. But by adding a little bit of water, you can actually extend that. Now I've just made a mistake there, that's okay. This all cleans up with water, and it's also non-toxic, so that's also a good thing. And then it's a very simple thing to just put this down, try and keep it square, push down. And I've been using one of these scrapers just to get it to work. I find if you go from the middle outwards, it tends to get rid of any air bubbles, but you can come back and revisit that a bit later. Same on the other side. You'll find that if you use this cotton sheet like I'm doing, it does tend to expand in different directions, so that helps. I've got some drips coming on down there, so I'll just get rid of those. Don't let the drips dry, because obviously it just makes it more difficult to get off. And now I'm just going to get another coat on the top of this section here, just to make sure it's properly soaked in. And a good soaking on that. Come back to the edges in a second. Same with the paintbrush, try and go from the middle outwards and downwards. That way you eliminate the air pockets, or to the best of your ability anyway. Right, doesn't seem to be any air bubbles in there. And we're also good to go here. It's always worth checking, because they do seem to appear sometimes when you least expect it. Next, if you've got a decent pair of scissors, then cut off the excess. My scissors are hopeless. I've tried sharpening them, but I'm just not good enough at it. So I've got a razor blade, put a bit of black tape on the back so I don't cut my fingers. But I'm just going to trim these down so that I've only just got about that much overhang on both sides. There's a bit more on here, so I'll just go along, cut that. And then once you've done that, you can go around the corners and just blend them in. Do that for all 4 corners. See if we can show you what I'm doing here. Just getting the glue in exactly the same position on this side. As I say, get plenty on. I do find that helps enormously with the lack of air bubbles if you do it that way. Okay. And take your next piece Laid on in exactly the same way as before. You can probably do this with a brush, but these spatulas also work quite well. Then get another coat of glue on so that you've thoroughly soaked this second piece. Just check for air bubbles. As I say, work from the middle outwards if you can and back down the way. It just helps to smooth everything out. Otherwise the cloth does move. If you need to, you can use one of those scrapers, the plastic ones. But I do find that at this point the paintbrush seems to work pretty well. Now we've got to contour the edges to make this fit. I'm going to have to create myself an issue here so I can show you what I'm doing. I'm laying this down, I'm going to have to clean up the table. What we're going to do is make sure we've got glue on everywhere it's going to need to be. Remember, this is my first time trying to do this kind of thing too, so I'm still making mistakes as I go. Okay, pull this one down. More glue on the outside. Okay, we're getting there. Pull this around. Again, I'm going to get this wet. And this is the part I find fairly awkward, because I'm going to now lift this back up. Okay, that's got the corner done. And there we are. Do the same for all the other sides and corners. Okay, well that's all of the corners done. Now I'm going to go over again. Remember, this is still fairly wet. I'm going to go over each of the strips and also the bare wood and give it another coat. Well, in the case of the wood, of course, it's the first coat, but this is just to make sure that the thing has a really good coat of, see, sometimes you get these little bits of string hanging out, which I'll come back to in a second and get rid of those. But really, let's just get this second coat on before the first one cures. And that's what I was saying before. If you're going to do this, make sure you get both coats on before either of them have a chance to dry. Don't know if you can hear the rain outside, but it's pretty much howling a gale and lashing down out there. So just as well to be in here today, I think. Right. Remember not to go that way when you're using your paintbrush on this, because all you're going to do is move the cotton strips. Now, I have actually used a roller for this sort of thing in the past, but I'm not using it on this one. And having said that, I'm going to give it a go, because as I say, I'm still learning too. See what sort of effect we have. Yeah, roller's actually a very thin coat, but it is a smooth coat, so maybe just use that for the final thing. Not pressing too hard, because otherwise I'm going to be squeezing glue out down the sides. Okay. A little bit of testing as well. You do tend to move things. As you see there, I've moved that now. So we can just smooth out the air bubbles again. See how easy it is to get air bubbles? And that's what you'd really have to try and avoid. So do take your time on that part. And just check it. Okay. I'll just do these other sides and edges, and then we can start trimming off these excess hairs from the edge of the cotton there. Just a few finishing touches just to make sure there's no air bubbles at all that you can see. Here. And you can, just at this point, still take this off and just smooth that one down. And then put it back again. Just be careful how you do it and make sure you're stretching the cotton fabric out a little bit. And of course, getting all the air bubbles out. Well, I think we're more or less there. And that's pretty much how I do it. Hey, it isn't the best job in the world, but it does look pretty effective. And I don't need it to look like the most perfect thing that's ever been done. What you may be aware of, and you may be able to see, is some hairs that are pulled out from the cotton. Excuse me. I will actually take a pair of tweezers, just lift those off and just slice them with a razor blade. But this is all going to be painted anyway, so a little bit of sanding and we're hopefully good to go. Okay, well, I've left these to dry overnight and I've cut off all those loose ends now, and we've got all of the sections of the outriggers done and all nicely sealed up. These will sit on top like that and look as though we're good to go on those. The bow is also nice and neatly done, looking quite good. And then we've got the main tub itself here. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time now just sanding down and making sure that everything's as smooth as I can do. I'm not going to be a perfect job, but I'll do my best. One thing I have noticed is I'm starting to get this black sort of stuff on quite a few of these seams. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something in this particular coloured cotton sheet that I use, or maybe it's something inside the wood. I really don't know, but hey, look, it seems to be really strong. I'm happy with it, and it's going to be painted anyway. And so that's how I do poor man's fiberglass. And that's it for another one then, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, click the like button. If you want to subscribe, you can. And until the next time, bye for now.